Welcome, ladies and gents. We've had the final race of the F1 season. Well, that started with an absolute bang, and not the bang that McLaren wanted, did they? I bet they had their heart in the mouth, and well, it did absolutely delivered. We got action all the way through that race. Some stunning drives from two of my favourite drivers. Three, in fact, actually, that pulled out some pretty stunning drives in the end. Yeah, we'll get to the three good and the three bad. Watch out for that's my favourite section of the segment today. But yeah, let's just a quick review of the race. And well, it started absolutely mental, didn't it? McLaren just wanted two good starts, and they pretty much got that. But Max Verstappen got an absolute flyer. He was quickly past Carlos Sainz, and then it was a bit of a late lunge to get on Oscar Piastri. He kind of had nothing to lose. Can see why he did it possibly, but I think even he knew it was too late, and it was quite far back. He did say he was up alongside, but that was a classic Max Verstappen late lunge move that he normally does. That kind of often gets him well alongside, but he was about halfway alongside Oscar Piastri for that move to stick. And yeah, spun them both around. Oscar Piastri's race from there on, it was an absolute struggle from him. Max Verstappen, it shot them both in the foot, didn't really. He got a 10-second penalty for that, rightly so. Charles Leclerc when you looked at McLaren doing bad start, and you thought, well, it might equal it out with Charles Leclerc so far back, but it didn't, did it? Charles Leclerc P8 at the end of lap 1, which was absolutely phenomenal. It was a bad start for both of the Red Bulls, wasn't it? Sergio Perez tapped and spun round by Valtteri Bottas. Bottas had nowhere to go on that one. There was three abreast going into the hairpin. Bottas was fairly into the corner and kind of did what he could to avoid Sergio Perez, who's pretty much mostly off track anyway, and not really had anywhere to go, and that spun Sergio around, and eventually that ended his race. And we got the safety car restart, and Oscar Piastri banging into the back of Franco Colapinto. It was just incident all over the place for Oscar, wasn't it? Not a great start to the race at all from him, and he was really on the back foot. He got a penalty for that because he effectively took Caldo out because he got a puncture. And dropped him way back down, didn't it? And then we just seen two phenomenal drives. Charles Leclerc was brilliant. He was in that Ferrari. He was so clean and crisp, and crucially just very, very quick overtakes. Nice move on Fernando. Alonso got himself up into P6 pretty quickly, and then a nice move on Pierre Gasly. It was both him and Max Verstappen who were both on the charge, actually, wasn't he? Max Verstappen recovering from 11th. He actually didn't do too badly compared to Sergio Oscar Piastri, did he, in his recovery? Because he dropped back but only fell to P11, whereas Oscar was at the back of the grid at the end of that spin. So, yeah, it's a surprise how little places he lost, considering. I mean, not you say he lost 9 places, but Piastri was plumb last. So, yeah, when you compare the two, it's surprising how much of a difference both of them managed in terms of getting back on the track. Yeah, and then Charles Leclerc was right up there. We then seen Carlos Sainz and Norris, and we thought it was a strategy game here. Did Ferrari get it wrong with calling Carlos Sainz in? I think they should have just pushed Lando Norris for as far as they believed that they could get him, just to just keep going, and in that sense of hoping that Charles Leclerc can bridge and close up on the pair of them if they both went slowly, and they're both sort of playing a game of dare, who blinks first, wasn't it, between Norris and Sainz. Ferrari did that. I can see why they tried it with the undercut. He came out a second and a half behind Norris, but I think it was just, it was a decent tactic from Ferrari and Carlos Sainz to try and get past Norris, but Norris was brilliant, wasn't he, from there on. And then we seen Lewis Hamilton. He went long on the hards. Lap 35 he pitted for them, and then from there on he was on the mediums on an absolute flyer. He had like 20 seconds to Charles Leclerc, about 15 to George Russell, and he managed to pass him with a brilliant move around the outside of George Russell to finish in P4. Norris won with a fantastic lights to flag finish, P1, controlled the race brilliantly, and with the amount of pressure that was on him, it was an absolute classic drive from him. Ferrari with the 1-2-2-3 behind him, just not enough on the day. Oscar Piastri obviously just pipped up with the P10, and that extra point would have been helpful for Red Bull, McLaren. And the battle for P6, Alpine and Pierre Gasly had a really solid drive, didn't he? Comfortably, well, I wouldn't say comfortably, but pretty steady job holding back Nico Hülkenberg. It was a battle between them two, wasn't it? Because K-Mag's race, unfortunately, just went up in smoke, didn't it? Such a shame for his last race, because he actually had a really good start, was right up there, made up is up to P7, so absolutely brilliant start from him. But then he obviously had that incident with Bottas, dropped him back, and then they just went for this strange strategy of trying to get fastest lap, but went on to softs very early on in the race. I'm not sure why they went for that strategy there. I mean, at the end of the race, just to get the fastest lap, for sort of just to say he went home with the fastest lap would have been fair enough, unless it was just because he knew he had damage after the incident with Magnussen. With Bottas, and it was potential that they might have to retire, and then you can see why they called that strategy, but it was a bit odd on the end. But Alpine and Gasly in particular did a brilliant job holding back Nico Hülkenberg. He had a 2-3 second gap on him, and a brilliant result for Alpine in the end, considering where their season started. They've had a very good and strong end to the season, haven't they? In Pierre in particular, Jack doing his first race, so-and-so race for him, but we'll get through the drivers rating, and I'll go through each and every one of the drivers, so watch out for that video. But let's get to the 3 good and the 3 bad of the race. The first of them, Lando Norris, like I say, P1, a lights to flag finish from first, perfect. He was massively under pressure, wasn't he? The title hope for McLaren landed on his shoulders once Oscar went spinning, and boy did he do a real good job. We've seen in the past where he's been leading up front, and these small little mistakes, didn't he? In Miami we've seen that, where he was controlling the race, and we've seen these little slips where he couldn't afford that today, because despite him being faster than the Ferraris, they were still in touching distance, 2-3 seconds, 4 seconds. I mean, only towards the end of the race where he got that 7.5 second gap to Sainz, when Sainz thought he had a puncture. But up until that time, it was 4 or 5 seconds. So any little slip up would have cost, and Sainz would have been right on his tail, and we would have been under big pressure. So a big pressure race, and he pulled off an absolutely brilliant win. I think it's well deserved for McLaren to get this first constructors' titles in 26 years, 1998 the last one. You can see what it meant to the whole team. They've done an absolutely brilliant job since last year, you've got to say, because they came out of nowhere last year. I think the only downside of their season so far is, considering how strong this finished last year, where they had got their car, of how badly they started this year, and that was the real big letdown, wasn't there, for them to potentially not have both drivers and constructors win. When you've got the constructors title and you've got shown that you've had the best car of the season, you've ultimately, as a driver, you'll be disappointed you've not won the championship with that. I think it's a unique season in that we've got Max Verstappen. It's probably the first time we've had a driver win a championship and their car be third place, 80 plus points back of McLaren. Yes, I know Red Bull have been fighting with one hand behind their back with what Sergio Perez has done, but we'll get to them later on in the video. But yeah, absolutely brilliant job from both McLaren. Lando Norris as well. He's got to next year. He said next year is going to be my year, and kind of really needs to just finish where, well, start where he's kind of finished this year, hasn't he? He's had, but when we had this big pressure on him, he's not really formed the last 6 races where he had to come away and win. Had tracks where you thought he should have been strong and should have won. Brazil was particularly one where he was, lined up on pole position. His title contender was way back. Yes, Max Verstappen was brilliant, but particularly Lando Norris wasn't great at all either. So, yes, weather conditions and all that things happened there. We look at Singapore, that's another one. Baku is another one. There's standout races where Lando Norris needs to just improve for next season. But this one, I think he can go home with a big high on his shoulders because he's shown that he can do it under pressure. It was big pressure because this was the only thing that the team had left to win, and it really did fall on his shoulders in the race, and an absolute tremendous job from him. Second of the three good, it is equal to be honest in terms of who lines up where, it's just where they are. But I've gone for Lewis Hamilton in his final race for Mercedes. Yesterday was an absolute disaster, wasn't it? And it looked like it ended all wrong for him at Mercedes, but a P16 to P4 finish was absolutely brilliant drive from him. It wasn't the easiest to overtake here, but he did it again. Like Charles Leclerc did really well, got himself up in good positions early on. I think he was up 4 places off the start, and from there on he just picked off the guys. They pitted. He had decent enough pace on the hards, but not fantastic. But obviously it helped as the cars ahead of him picked, and then on the mediums he just put off. It was nice to hear that you go for it. It's hammer time, strap 5, hammer time from Bono for the last time we'd heard them two as a partnership. And boy did Hamilton pull that off, nicked 4th place with an absolutely fantastic move. It didn't look like he'd be able to pull that off when he got to the end of that turn 9, didn't he? That's where the end of the DRS zone was. He didn't look like he never went for the inside. Russell went for the inside block. He went for the outside move. And he pulled it off with a brilliant move, with a nice drive around the outside. It obviously helped that he was on the better medium tyres to get that traction out of there, but he aced that corner to get Russell in the end. They were free to fight. It wasn't a position handing over or any gesture like that from George Russell. They were free to fight, and Hamilton pulled it off and topped off a real solid result for him, and it's nice that it's ended this way. A lot of nice messages on the radio for him and the team. It's Lewis Hamilton moves on. It's a sad time. He's no longer a Mercedes driver. You'll be watching me and Lewis Hamilton red for more from next season, but he's topped off. And it's nice that it's finished on a positive note, because we've had a few horrible races from him before that. Even last time out wasn't a good one for him in Qatar in the end, was it? So it's ended on a high, which is really good, and it'll be real charged by that. Ferrari, it'll be just missing out on the Constructors' Championship, but they are clearly on the up, and so they'll be massively excited to have Lewis go in there, and it will be interesting to see what he can do. But for this race, it was absolutely brilliant for Lewis Hamilton. A fantastic race driver. It shows what brilliant racecraft he has, and he's been so strong on Sundays for quite a number of times now, hasn't he? He just needs to sort of sort out that qualifying glitch that sort of popped up this season. Third of the three good, Charles Leclerc, the driver of the day. He shouldn't really be last, but Norris won a championship for McLaren. It was the last day for Hamilton and Mercedes, and that's why there's no sort of order of where the three good are. For me, they've been absolutely all equal. But Charles Leclerc, to me, I think he tops it, doesn't he? P19 to P3, when it just looked all lost. It went horribly for him in FP1. Qualifying was an absolute disaster out in Q2. And end up was going to be last, but obviously helped with the penalties behind him. Started in 19th, and to be 8th at the start of the race, he absolutely put his car in all the right positions. It obviously helped with the Bottas and Perez incident, the Piastri and Max Verstappen incident, but he put his car in the right places, because you could easily get caught up and blocked up in them when them sort of incidents happen. He put himself in the right places. The one on the outside when he passed sort of the whole bunch of 4 or 5 cars into that chicane when Perez went spinning was absolutely fantastic. Seeing the space, took full advantage of that, and from there on he was decisive. Real good moves on Alonso, real good move on Pierre Gasly. We've seen sort of George Russell getting stuck behind him, didn't we? But Leclerc was right on it. Real good moves. Went for the undercut on George Russell, and that was a good strategy call from Ferrari at that time. Probably was trying to maybe put some pressure if the hards had been better on McLaren, but I think Lando Norris was just too far ahead of him. He did the best that he could do for the team, just not quite enough, because he was gutted at the end that they couldn't get the Constructors title for the team. But it was a long shot when you had 21 points to gain on your rivals in the last race, but did they give it a great go. and an absolutely brilliant job from him. P3, the two teammates from next year had absolutely cracking drives, didn't they? Both the pair of them at the end of the season. It'll be interesting to see how them two pair together next season. And I'm going to give a shout out to Alex Albon, who started in P18, finished in P11, made up 7 places. Obviously, he was helped out by a few DNFs, but was right up in there at P9, wasn't he? But he went for the strategy call again to try and, stretch them hard tyres at the end. He was already done 34 laps on them tyres when he was in P9, and then we still had 10 laps to go. So it was a bit of a long stretch for him to try and do that. I don't think it was just an adapted strategy through the race rather than one that looked like pre-planned in terms of the first stops, because it gave him so much to do on that hard tyre at the end. But he nearly pulled it off, didn't he? Just couldn't hold back Fernando Alonso for too long. I think that would probably have been his better chance, because as soon as Oscar Piastri was behind in that McLaren on fresher tyres, that was the car that won the race, so he was always going to struggle to keep him back. But he can be happy with his end of last race of the season. It's not been the best few races for them over the last 5 or 6 races. This short stretch of 6 races in 7 weeks. It's not been a happy 7 weeks for Williams at all. They'll be happy to get this season over and done with. They go into the next season with good momentum. Carlos Sainz joining, big driver, a nice finish to the end of the season for Williams, and they'll be hoping that they can start off on the right foot for next season. Yes, they've had a massive repair bill, and hopefully that doesn't affect them too much going with their cost budget into next season. I'm not sure where the cut-off lies in terms of that, because obviously they'll hit their budget for the development of the car for next season. Although the big season is 2026, so with 2 experienced drivers, they'll be hoping that really helps them out to have a good budget to work on that 26 car from there onwards. But yeah, shout out to Albon from there. On to the 3 bad. Max Verstappen is the first of them, isn't it? What a shocking race from him. To absolutely great start, but then threw it away with that late daft lunge on Oscar Piastri. It was so far back. He was just let down, but I was always let down by his comment of saying they should have given me a 20-second penalty instead, the idiot. So I think that was really immature of a 4-time world champion, an absolutely brilliant driver, but just some of his characteristics as a person just sometimes don't come across well in the heat of sport moments. And I think that's his biggest letdown, isn't it? But he wears his heart on his sleeves, and sometimes that's what you want from your racing drivers. I think that was the disappointing side of there. But in the race on the whole, wasn't he? He just was almost invisible in that race. The man that's won the championship 4 in a row didn't feature in the final race of the season at all, really. Wasn't ever going to do anything. The 10-second penalty was purely justified. I don't know how he was complaining about that too much. He was never really fully alongside Oscar to pull off that move. And I had such a great start to pass Sainz straight off the bat, didn't he? And it could have been then in for a decent first lap battle with the 2 McLarens, and it's a shame it's finished the way it has his season, because there's no 2 ways about it. He's been brilliant to pull off a championship winning season for him when the car's been so poor, and you see Red Bull down in 3rd place in the constructors, comfortably beaten by both McLaren and Ferrari in the end. What a real good job he's done, but this race was probably one of his worst, I think. He was a bit no man's land in the end, managed to recover and back up, got up to P6. By that time, though, his tyres were shot. Lewis was the one ahead of him at that time on the mediums and pulling away, and he was just not quick enough to try and catch either of the 2 Mercedes. So interesting there with the 4th fastest car in race conditions in the end. And yeah, not a good race from him. Second of the 3 bad is I'm going for Oscar Piastri, and yes, it's going to sound very harsh, that, because the crux of his downfall in the race was not his fault at all. He was taken out by Max Verstappen, but what he did on the virtual safety car restart actually was purely down to him, wasn't he? Straight up the back of Franco Colapinto, caused him a puncture and took him out of the race. Gave him the 10-second penalty as well. When your team needed you, it was just small mistakes coming. And then he was stuck behind Fernando Alonso for an awfully long time in a car that was much faster than his. It topped off what was just went horribly wrong for Oscar, didn't it, in the final race, and I'll be disappointed with that, because otherwise it's been a pretty solid campaign for him and his full proper season with the team, and some big points and big wins, but when it needed him, the team, he's kind of just dropped back a little bit, hasn't he, in this race? It just wasn't a good one for him at all. And the third of the three bad is the Racing Bulls. Not Red Bull, it's the Racing Bulls. Liam Lawson, yes, the pit error was horrible for him. He wasn't doing a great job before that either, but that really did cost him. They didn't tighten that front left wheel. They then got the 10-second stop-go penalty, which was like a 30-40 second plus penalty, put him right at the back. And then it was just a struggle from there, really. And then Yuki Tsunoda also was just absolutely horrible start. He just clutch went and he was absolutely nowhere from a decent qualifying position. They never really looked like they were going to be in to take up and beat anyone in the constructors, even though they got close, thanks to a couple of decent results for them. But this one was an absolute horrible one for them. What could have gone wrong did go wrong from the team, the drivers, both of them. A real bad end to the season. And it was predicted sort of good things from them, wasn't it? We had McLaren sort of piping up saying, look, this Racing Bull, Red Bull, two teams trying things out, working together really close. It needs to be scrutinised, it needs to be checked. And they've not really done anything of note, actually, for most of this season. So disappointing from them. And that's it. Yeah, that's the final race of the season done. Watch out for the driver's rating coming later in the week. And then there'll be a season 24 review of my best and worst races of the season also. So there'll be stuff to keep us going through this season. The F1 testing, young driver testing, will be live on TV as well. So hopefully I'll get some reaction back on that to you guys as well. But yeah, what a brilliant end to the season. McLaren Constructors Championship, well deserved since 1998. A real big job from them. Fantastic from the team, and them guys pulled it off brilliantly. But yeah, a brilliant drive from Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc. It'll be fantastic to see them two guys as teammates next season, as it will with Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon. So all big changes. Red Bull got it all to do, haven't they, despite some real good results this season. And there we have it. That's a wrap. It's been an incredibly long season. It's been brilliant, and the race, the final one was really good to watch, and it just topped off what's been a great season of racing after what didn't promise to be very good after the first 4 races did it at all. But there we have it. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment. As always, see you next time.